Good afternoon, football fans, and welcome back to Sports Crunch with D. Crom. I'm your host, David Cromwell, but more commonly known in the sports media world as D. Crom. And I'm sorry we've been on hiatus for a little bit here, but that's because the Shield, that's right, the Shield, known as the National Football League, the most popular sports product in North America, is back and rearing again. And it's surprising that we are already a quarter into the 2015 NFL season, and it's been full of surprises. It's been full of stories that were expected, yet even that turned out even better than expected, or worse than expected, as there's always the NFL, and to discuss everything that has gone on in the NFL a quarter into the season so far, we are pleased to welcome back our good friend, the host of the CS podcast, Mr. Chris Shanafelt. Chris, it's good to have you back on the program.
Hey, it's good to be back. Thank you for having me back on, David. It's always a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Chris. You're one of the best football minds I know out there. And let's start out with let's start talking about the team that is pretty much being looked at as at least one of the top two teams, if not the best team in the NFL, the New England Patriots. And as I personally expected, Roger Goodell has created another Frankenstein with the Patriots because with all the Deflategate nonsense, the Patriots have adopted that us against the world mentality like they did after Spygate in 2007, and it seems like it's going to happen again. Tom Brady is on fuego. He may be 38 years old, but he's playing like he's 28 in many ways. And the Patriots are just lighting up the scoreboard, just having no mercy on any opponent. And not only that, not only are they 3-0 right now, but their schedule, if you look at their remaining schedule, aside from 3 games, which are 2 versus the New York Jets, who are 3-1, and 1 against the Denver Broncos, who currently boast the NFL's best defense, arguably, on the road in Denver, to add to that. But aside from those 3 games, if you look at their games, they play the Dolphins, who are a mess twice, the Colts, and the rest of the Titans and the Texans, and that division is a mess right now. They play the NFC East, which is a mess right now. So if you look at that, there are only 3 games I think that are losable on their schedule. So my question is, would it surprise you if the Patriots went 16-0 again?
Yep. It definitely would. I mean, like you said, I mean, their schedule certainly favors them, but still, I mean, over the last couple of years, there's no doubt that the NFC West was the toughest division in the NFL. Now you can make an argument for the AFC East with New England. Miami hasn't had the season that most people have expected, but the New York Jets are a damn good team. Under Ryan Fitzpatrick, they got a lot more firepower on offense, obviously, thanks to Brandon Marshall. Their defense is one of the best in the league. That's a very tough team right there. And like you said, they still have to face them twice. And I could easily see the Jets, at least, throughout the first 4 games of the season, how they've looked so far. I could easily see the Jets stealing away at least one of those games. Who knows, maybe both of them, but that hasn't been done in quite some time. And then you still got the Buffalo Bills, who, again, another great defense. Tyrod Taylor has been playing very well. I mean, this is a guy that is a career backup. This is his first season having a starting job. I mean, he's really been playing very exceptional. I know that he struggled, I believe it was just this past weekend. But anyways, you got to expect that for a guy that, this is his first time having a starting job. So, the struggles and the successes will come with Tyrod Taylor. So that's a very tough conference. Obviously, I like you said, they play the NFC East as well. And that's looking like another very ugly division. No team. I mean, I think 3 teams in that division are 2-2, and then you got the Philadelphia Eagles that are 1-3. So it's looking pretty rough over there in the NFC East. So while the New England Patriots schedule probably favors them, I will certainly be surprised if they go 16-0. And honestly, I just don't see it happening. And of course, we're only 4 games into the season. Still a lot more to see and watch. Watch unfold. But as of right now, I I mean, as powerful and dominant as the New England Patriots are looking at, and you got to think that they're playing with a chip on their shoulder with the type of offseason that they had. I don't think I see them going 16-0 this season though.
You bring up a good point. It's not just the Jets and the Bills. Going into Denver to face that Broncos defense isn't going to be that easy of a challenge either. I don't think for them. But Peter King did bring up a good point in his Monday morning quarterback column this week, saying that it would sort of shock him, or that it would shock him if the Patriots don't win at least 13 or 14 games, and that is something that I would personally expect out of them. Would you?
Oh yeah. I would expect at least 13, just because, like you said, I mean, you mentioned it. They don't have the toughest schedule now. They do have some tough opponents like the Buffalo Bills. They still play them once. They play the New York Jets twice, two more times, and then like you said, the Denver Broncos. One of the top defenses in the NFL. Yeah, although they're going to win some of those tough games, no doubt. I mean, the New England Patriots are a great team. But I got to think they're going to drop at least one or two. But yeah, I would say at least 12 wins. I could see them winning 13 or 14 as well, though.
Yeah. I could absolutely see that. I would personally be shocked if they didn't win 13 based on their schedule and how they're playing with that chip on their shoulders and with their anger at Roger Goodell and the National Football League for putting them out to pasture, so to speak, and dragging them through the mud. And they feel very disrespected right now, and they're playing that way. And when the Patriots play that way, they are exceptionally hard to beat. And another question about the Patriots before we move on to another team that's caught my eye so far this season. Yes, Tom Brady. Yes, he won his fourth Super Bowl last year, and you can't just blame the bad call by the Seahawks at the goal line for it. He was an absolute animal in that fourth quarter, and without him, they don't win that game, clearly. So if Tom Brady wins a fifth Super Bowl, whether it's this year or next year, do you think that cements him as the absolute best quarterback of all time?
I think so, because you even go back to the 2007 season when they almost went undefeated. They were 18-0 until the New York Giants knocked them off in the Super Bowl, and they go 18-1. That was like the most talented team that Tom Brady was surrounded with, especially offensive wise. I mean, you had Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth. You had a lot of great weapons for Tom Brady, but you see the championships that he's won. I mean, he's doing it with guys that are coming off the street. I mean, per se. I mean, you got Julian Edelman, an undrafted guy that was a quarterback at Kent State coming out of college. Let's see. I mean, Aaron Dobson, he was a second-round draft pick, but he hasn't really done much. And then, of course, Danny Amendola. I mean, he's doing this with guys that you just wouldn't expect any quarterback to succeed with. Now, granted, he does have Rob Gronkowski, the greatest tight end in the NFL, and I don't think any defense can cover that guy. And at least throughout the first 4 games of the season, it's been proven that way. But yeah, if Tom Brady wins a fifth Super Bowl, I'll absolutely say that it probably will cement him as the greatest quarterback of all time. Not only did he win 5, if he goes to another one, he's gone to 7 Super Bowls, which is, I mean, that's impressive by itself, whether you win them all or lose them all. But to be able to walk away with 5 championships at the end of the day, that's just something unheard of, especially in the NFL.
Absolutely. And for the record, Julian Edelman was a 7th-round draft pick out of Kent State, but so almost undrafted, and Wes Welker was undrafted too. But I would personally argue that there are some characteristics to Julian Edelman's game that I like a lot better than Wes Welker's game. So Brady's, it's not a lack of weapons. It's just a nature of elevating them. I think Edelman would have succeeded with Peyton Manning as well. So, yes, but great quarterbacks mostly make their receivers and not their other way around. I agree. But I'm just saying that you can't underrate the weapons he has right now either. And
I was just saying that, I mean, we're here in Chicago. I mean, you're not going to get a Pro Bowl type of season out of Julian Edelman with Jay Cutler as your quarterback.
No way. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I completely agree. I could only think of a couple quarterbacks in this league who would elevate Julian Edelman. And the next one, I think would do a great job with a guy like Julian Edelman, in my opinion. And he is part of a team that I predicted to win their division, but they are even exceeding my own expectations, the Atlanta Falcons. And Matt Ryan playing arguably some of the best football of his career. Julio Jones on pace for an historic receiving season. And Dan Quinn bringing that dirty bird mentality back to the Falcons, as we was the defensive coordinator for the Seahawks the past 2 years, and he has been exactly the guy I expected for that and then some. The Falcons are no longer finesse. They were arguably the softest team in the NFL the past 2 years, and now they play like they want to punch you in the mouth. And it's not just Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. The way with Devontae Freeman playing out of his mind right now, and Tevin Coleman also was playing good before he got hurt. And when he gets back, they're going to have a two-headed monster in that backfield, and they'll be able to run the ball very well. Kyle Shanahan working offensive line magic yet again, as he's done, as he and Gary Kubiak and his dad, Mike Shanahan, have done numerous times throughout their career. And they have a promising young core on defense with Vic Beasley, rookie out of Clemson, Desmond Trufant, who in my opinion is becoming a top 5 corner in the NFL, and they got solid depth pieces in the offseason with Justin Durant, and Brooks Reed hasn't even played yet. And when he comes back, they're going to have a formidable pass rush, in my opinion. And if you look at the Atlanta Falcons, the remainder of their schedule, and I'm going to put it on the screen for our viewers to see. Hang on, let me get it. Sorry for the delay, everybody. I'm just got to show our Falcon schedule to our viewers here. And here we go. The Atlanta Falcons. If you look at their schedule, right, the remainder of their schedule, look at it. Every team they will play for the remainder of the year, sans the Carolina Panthers, has a winning record right now. And yes, there'll be some tough games like against the Colts if healthy, and obviously against Minnesota, who I remain bullish on to get a wild card playoff spot. But if you look at the rest of that schedule, it's pretty dang easy. So my question is, do you think the Atlanta Falcons have a shot, at least a shot, a decent shot, to compete with the Packers for home field advantage in the NFC?
Probably playing in that division, it probably does. It probably makes it a better chance. But 4 games in, I'm still, and I know, and this is something that you and I have gone back and forth on so many times. But yeah, that Seahawks offensive line is worse than I thought. But I'm still not going to throw them away, though. I still think that there's a chance that they could get hot. Now they got Cam Chancellor back. I'm still gonna roll with a team out of the NFC West, whether it's Seattle or Arizona. But yeah, like you said, I mean, Atlanta has been on fire this season, and Dan Quinn has brought that championship mentality to Atlanta, and you could see it. I mean, you've seen it week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, that was just a totally different team. That defense was just playing lights out, getting after the quarterback. And you mentioned a few guys like a Justin Durant, a Brooks Reed, a guy that I really like that they also picked up through free agency. And he's familiar with Dan Quinn with playing, as he played with him under Seattle, is O'Brien Schofield. And that guy has just been on. I mean, he's been playing awesome for the Atlanta Falcons. He's been a really solid player for the last few years now. I think what the Atlanta Falcons are doing, and obviously you want to land the big free agent names like a Ndamukong Suh or whatnot. You want to sign the big time contracts, but what they're doing is they're kind of signing these guys, giving them an opportunity to kind of prove themselves. And so they're signing these 1-2 year deals, not worth a ton of money, and they're still going out there. They're still trying to fight for that big contract. You're not going to see a Brooks Reed sign a major deal or Brian Schofield, but these guys are going in to Atlanta. And of course, playing under this Dan Quinn defense, and they're trying to kind of prove themselves under this new regime, this new coaching staff, which I just think is great. And I think it's really been a huge part of why they're 3-0. And obviously on offense, I mean, Matt Ryan, Julio Jones. They've been unstoppable in that running attack, especially Devontae Freeman over the last couple of weeks. I mean, it's really been something that I did not see coming at all. I did think Atlanta was going to be an upgraded team this season. I didn't see them starting this season this hot, though.
Nobody did, not even I. And I predicted Atlanta to win that division. And they even exceeded my expectations, which were pretty fairly high. But moving along, the way this Falcons team is playing, it makes me curious as to whether you think that they are ready to go toe-to-toe with the Green Bay Packers of the world. Do you think they are?
No. You know what? I don't think there's many teams that are ready to go up against Aaron Rodgers, man. That is a bad man, as somebody from ESPN would say. Aaron Rodgers is just ridiculous, and he's just tearing defenses up. I mean, he doesn't have the greatest offensive line. That team has seen a number of injuries. Obviously, he's without his number one wide receiver in Jordy Nelson, but he's still able to find a way to make it work. And of course, Eddie Lacy has been banged up as well. So some way, somehow, Aaron Rodgers is able to find a way. And honestly, I just think this Atlanta Falcons team, they're a little too young. That this is their first year under Dan Quinn and this defense. Maybe in a couple of years, but right now, I don't think. As of right now, I think I'm on your side. I mean, I don't think anybody's getting past the Green Bay Packers.
I actually agree with you. The Falcons are looking very promising, and they might be ready in a year or two, but not right now. And you mentioned Aaron Rodgers, and I want to actually talk about Aaron Rodgers. Yes, Tom Brady could very well go down as the greatest quarterback of all time, but from a pure talent perspective, from a pure skill set perspective in a quarterback, I personally have never seen a quarterback with the skill set that Aaron Rodgers has. He does everything that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and Joe Montana can or could do, and does everything that they can't or couldn't do. Like he just has that extra dimension to him with his mobility, the way he's able to move his feet inside, out of the pocket, and that release easily the quickest since somebody named Dan Marino. Like this guy, I would make an argument if Rodgers wins a Super Bowl this year, making lemons out of the lemonade, as you suggested he has been so far this season. He has been. If he wins this year, I would argue that he joins Tom Brady in that conversation for greatest quarterback of all time. You agree?
I don't know about the greatest quarterback of all time, just because so many people just look at how many championships are won, and I think ultimately that's going to give Tom Brady the nod. But I do agree with you that just because Tom Brady could be the greatest quarterback of all time doesn't mean Aaron Rodgers isn't the most talented. I think that you could easily say that right now. Like you said, I mean, he could use his mobility. He could throw the ball 55, 60, 70 yards down the field, hit a wide receiver, Ty Montgomery, for instance, a rookie that many people may not be too familiar with, and or Jeff Janis or Jeff Eberderis. I mean, some of these unknown guys, and make them known. And you've seen that in James Jones. I mean, this is a guy that was with Oakland last year. He was with the New York Giants in like training camp or just to start a preseason maybe, and then they let him go, and here he is catching a touchdown in just about every game so far to start this season. Aaron Rodgers is able to, like you said, make lemonade out of lemons, and it's really just I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people, like how many have said about LeBron James. I mean, we got to cherish this moment. I might be a fan of the Chicago Bears and whatnot, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate what we're seeing out of the quarterback Aaron Rodgers, because you just have to with what he's done over the last over the last few years, and obviously what he still has left to do throughout the rest of his career.
Most definitely. And I understand your point about the Super Bowls, but my personal opinion is I don't like personally using Super Bowls as the ultimate litmus test for greatness. And but that's for another show. And now let's move on. And let's move on to another team that many people are saying could very well have taken that next step already, but I'm not going to be sold on it until they win a playoff game, personally. The Cincinnati Bengals, man. And the Cincinnati Bengals are 4-0, and the last time they went 4-0 was, I believe, when they went to the Super Bowl and lost in heartbreaking fashion to Joe Montana and the 49ers. And arguably, and you could credit a lot of things for it. Geno Atkins is finally playing like the Pro Bowl defensive tackle he has. He clearly wasn't healthy last year, as he was still recovering from his ACL injury. And so with him coming back to form, puts that defense back to form. But the biggest reason why is, I don't believe I'm really saying this, is Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton. Yes, folks, Andy Dalton, that same mediocre quarterback that we love to talk about and trash these past several years, is the only obstacle from preventing the loaded Bengals roster from reaching and winning a Super Bowl, is on fire to start the season. Thanks to, I'm not saying it's more his weapons than him, but his supporting cast definitely plays a big role in it. With A.J. Green, obviously, and you got Marvin Jones back. You got a two-headed monster in the backfield with Gio Bernard, Jeremy Hill, and Tyler Eifert finally playing like the player we expected him to be coming out of Notre Dame. And I'm just trying to find a stat on my phone. Here it is. Andy Dalton. Here's how good he's playing right now. Second in the NFL in QBR. Third in passing yards. Third in touchdown passes. And first in 20-plus yard completions. And his deep ball accuracy was pan for the first 4 seasons of his career. And Chris, are you sold yet? Can we say with confidence right now that Andy Dalton has turned the corner?
Well, I mean, like you just said, and you just spit out the numbers. I mean, he certainly has gotten off to a great start to this season. I don't know, man. It's tough. I mean, Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals have let me down over the last couple of years. I've had them winning their division the last couple of years. And, now this is the year where I predict the Ravens to win their division. The Ravens get off to an ugly start, and the Bengals get off to a great start. Like you said, the first time they started 4-0 since, the last time they were in the Super Bowl. I don't know if I'm ready to trust Andy Dalton just yet. Yes, he's gotten off to a great start, but we've seen him play at a high level before, and then once the playoffs come around, he just looks like a totally different quarterback. And I don't know if that's just the pressure getting to him. I don't know if it's just, the defense of the opposing team that he's playing against or what it is. But, this 4-game sample size to start the season has certainly been impressive. But I don't know if I'm ready yet to put any money on Andy Dalton, in the postseason just yet. I don't know if he's turned the corner just yet. Give me 4 more weeks, and I think I'll be able to give you a better answer. But as of right now, I'm not exactly sold on Andy Dalton, but there's no doubt about it. He's gotten off to a great start to this season. Let's just see if he's able to continue playing at this high level.
Exactly. I'm not completely sold yet because aside from the Chiefs, he's played 2 of the worst pass defenses in the league, in the Raiders and Ravens, and the Chargers aren't necessarily an elite defense either. So it's way too early to tell. And this week, the Bengals play host to the Seattle Seahawks this week. And even though the Seahawks are struggling in many regards, their defense is still the second best in the league in total defense, behind only my Denver Broncos. So how telling will that game be for gauging Andy Dalton's progress, you think?
I think a lot of people are going to read a lot into it, as they should, because it's one of the top defenses in the NFL, and it has been for the last few years. Hence why they've been to the Super Bowl the past 2 years, winning one of those against your Denver Broncos.
Yeah, of course, it was no contest.
But I mean, a lot of people are going to be paying attention to this game, and let's see what Andy Dalton is able to do against this defense with some great defenders in that secondary. Of course, they do got Cam Chancellor back. They're 2-0 since Cam Chancellor has been back. Obviously, they still have Richard Sherman, Earl Thomas, and they acquired Kerry Williams, who I'm not exactly too high on. They acquired Williams in free agency. He really struggled in Philadelphia. I actually kind of liked him in Baltimore, but we'll see exactly what Williams is able to do this season. I'm not exactly sure how he has started this season, but playing opposite side of Richard Sherman, I'm sure has to help him out. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be a huge test for Andy Dalton, and and you mentioned it. He has some great weapons to work with, not only in the backfield with Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill, but obviously AJ Green has had a nice start to the season. You have Marvin Jones back, who's another Cincinnati Bengal who is looking like he's healthy after suffering an injury last season. A season-ending injury last season to note that, and then of course Mohamed Sanu. So it's going to be a nice battle between the Cincinnati Bengals offense and still one of the top defenses in the NFL in the Seattle Seahawks. And it is going to be a huge test for Andy Dalton, who has gotten off to a great start this season.
It most certainly is, and that is one of the big games I am looking forward to the most this weekend. And moving right along to the team I alluded to that I cheer for, the Denver Broncos, another one of those 4-0 teams, but this could be the only time in the illustrious career of Peyton Manning where his defense has been better than his offense, and for good reason. Because obviously he's 39 years old and his skills are more limited than ever before, and the residual effects of that neck fusion surgery, I think, have caught up to him, unfortunately. But that is, but the fact that he's been able to keep a lot of this up for as long as he has after that surgery still exemplifies Peyton Manning's greatness. But the Denver Broncos have, like I suggest, they've been winning in interesting ways. They've been winning with defense, and each 4 of their games has pretty much been decided by a late fourth quarter or end of the game turnover. So there's a little bit of luck involved, but Louis Riddick of ESPN will be the first to say, no, it's not luck. A lot of skill goes into forcing turnovers and those kinds of plays. So are the Denver Broncos, my question to you, contender or pretender?
I was on a podcast last week, and I was on air. I'm on record saying they were pretenders, just because. And we've seen it with the Seattle Seahawks. Defenses can still win championships. In this era, but the way Peyton Manning, I didn't think he was going to decline this much. And don't get me wrong, I'm more concerned about that offensive line than I am with Peyton Manning. I think he could still win football games. Obviously, his arm is dying out. I mean, that's what happens when you're in the league as long as he is. But and they do have so much talent on that team still. But I really do think it all rides on that offensive line. I mean, right now they probably are the top defense in the National Football League, at least to start the season. Lots of talent on that defense, but just seeing the way Peyton Manning is getting punished, and God forbid if he gets hurt at all this season, obviously we don't want to see that. But if he does suffer an injury at some point this season, then I think certainly hopes will go down the drain. It's hard to call the Denver Broncos pretenders right now. I still think they're the best team in their division. I mean, San Diego, Kansas City, 2 teams that have underperformed. Oakland has looked all right, but you're not going to see them winning their division at least this season. They have a nice young squad, but that's more for the future. So looking back, I was on that podcast last week. I called them pretenders. It's really hard to say. I'll say they're contenders just because I do still see them winning their division, but I'm not exactly sure how positive I am that they'll get far into the playoffs, though.
I agree with a lot of your sentiment there. I don't think they're super contenders, but I don't think they're pretenders either. I think it's somewhere in the middle. But
I'll agree with you there.
It is somewhere in the middle. But what I think is possible, that if the defense keeps this level of play up and improves, I think that I'm not saying they're going to beat the Patriots. I still don't think they're good. I think they're better than they were last year in many areas, but they're still not good enough to beat the Patriots or the Packers and teams like that. But if they have to meet the Patriots in the playoffs in Foxborough or something like that, I think they can at least make it competitive and give them a run for their money. Do you think that's possible?
I do, especially like you said, if their defense keeps this, high level of play up, then yes, certainly, I could certainly see them at least keeping it competitive. And who knows, in a competitive game, I mean, anything could happen.
Absolutely anything could happen. And that's why the Broncos are built the way they are now, knowing that Peyton Manning cannot single-handedly dominate games anymore. And one final question about Peyton Manning. We obviously talked about Tom Brady potentially being the greatest of all time. And if he wins his fifth Super Bowl, I'm giving him that crown easily. And not just based on the fifth Super Bowl, based on his tape and his brilliance and his talent and stuff like that. But I personally think that too many in the media are unfair to Peyton Manning, and they're making it seem like the difference in ability level between him and Brady is gargantuan, which it really isn't. The Super Bowls, in my opinion, are just the tiebreaker that separates Brady from being the greatest conversation and Peyton. Do you think and some in the media have suggested that Peyton Manning's not an all-time great. He doesn't deserve to be an all-time great. He's not even a top 5 quarterback of all time. I still completely disagree with that. Do you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it seems like too many people are reading into this season and the end of last season of Peyton Manning. I mean, yeah, it wasn't his greatest ball. It was his worst. But for that to be his worst is pretty damn good if you compare it to other quarterbacks throughout the NFL history, and playing today in the NFL. If the worst Peyton Manning, any team would take Peyton Manning at his worst. I'll say that. I'll say that. I mean, minus teams like the New England Patriots who still have like a Tom Brady, but I think a lot of people read into obviously his struggles as of late, and I think a lot of people think that maybe he should have done more with the weapons he was surrounded with. Obviously, in Indy, he had Reggie Wayne and Marvin Harrison. He had some great weapons, Dallas Clark, Edgerrin James at some point. I mean, all those kind of come to mind, and maybe he could have done a little bit more, but he wasn't really working with very talented defenses. So seeing that he was able to at least make 2 Super Bowl appearances in Indianapolis, win one of those obviously against the Chicago Bears, and then make another one with the Denver Broncos, and obviously still looking to make yet another run to the Super Bowl and hopefully end his career with at least 2 Super Bowl rings, if not more, if he continues to play. Who knows? But I will absolutely say that Peyton Manning, I do see Tom Brady being above Peyton Manning. I don't think it's that big of a margin, though. I don't think there's a huge gap in between those 2 players. Obviously, it's been a great every season we get to see Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. It's always a matchup to watch for, especially as of late. You don't know when the last one's going to be. But I certainly think if I had to say right now, I would certainly put Peyton Manning in my top 5 quarterbacks of all time, though. He's certainly an all-time great for the media members who think he isn't. I think that's just ridiculous.
I personally agree, and I personally think that, yes, you could compare Peyton's playoff record to Brady's playoff record all you want, but I guarantee you, Peyton Manning played good in most of his playoff games enough to win. And yes, he had faults in his losses, but his other teammates didn't help him, whereas Brady had the quality help in areas that Peyton did not, especially when it comes to defense, grounding the ball, January-style football, which is why I don't think although I would put Brady over Manning on the all-time list, it's still very close. I would argue that we have witnessed the two savviest quarterbacks to ever play in the National Football League are Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. They are not the most gifted athletes, but boy, do they have beautiful brains, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, they know how to make it work, that's for sure.
Absolutely. 2 best pre-snap recognitions I've ever seen personally. And now moving along to the team that I expect to come out of the NFC and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, as I've been talking about on this show dating back to the summer, the Green Bay Packers. And yes, Aaron Rodgers is still playing out of his mind, but a fact that is being ignored by way too many people is the improvements of the Packers' defense so far. And you can talk about their schedule, saying, oh, they didn't face high-powered offenses, but still take it with a grain of salt. They are currently 8th in total defense, and their play against the run has improved drastically, in my opinion, based on watching a couple of their games. And according to Peter King, they are averaging 4.3 sacks per game. So is there any player or scheme or whatever that you could point to the Packers' improvements on defense? What has been the key to that progress?
Well, obviously, Clay Matthews and even Julius Peppers. I didn't see this, rebirth of Julius Peppers' career there in Green Bay, playing outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense. But he's been great there. Clay Matthews, obviously. But one guy I think has really has really made an impact on the defense this season is Mike Daniels. That guy, the Packers, he's really helped the Packers pass rush this season. And like you said, they're averaging about 4 sacks per game. And to see Mike Daniels kind of succeed, I mean, he's kind of been a player that has been working his way up over the last couple of years. And, to start this season, I think he has been the main reason. I'll go out on a limb. I'll say he's been the main reason for the Green Bay Packers' success because, as you know, I mean, if you're able to get a pass rush, that's certainly going to affect any quarterback. It's going to affect his timing. It's going to affect the wide receivers down the field and obviously help out that secondary back there as well. So if you're able to get a pass rush, and I think Mike Daniels has been a huge part of that pass rush and has had a ton of success. I don't have his numbers in front of me right now, but he's had a very impressive start to this season, and I think that he's been a huge part of the Packers' success on defense so far.
You bring up a good point. Mike Daniels is constantly creating those disturbances up the middle rather than on the edges as Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers are. And if you get that middle pressure in the quarterback's face, that frees up Clay Matthews and Julius Peppers to even do more damage. And I completely see where you're coming from. And you could definitely make that argument about Mike Daniels being the biggest factor why they're improving. Like he and BJ Raji are solidifying everything in the middle. So, and the Packers don't appear soft up the middle like they were the past couple of years. And that is definitely a reason why. And now that ends our brief discussion on the Green Bay Packers because we alluded to Aaron Rodgers earlier. But throughout this first quarter of the season, what other teams have caught your eyes?
Well, one that comes to mind is the Carolina Panthers. Obviously, they're tied first in their division with the Atlanta Falcons. They're both undefeated. The Carolina Panthers have really surprised me. I mean, Cam Newton, he's really. I was a huge fan of his. I mean, I would probably argue that he might be my favorite quarterback as a talent standpoint in the National Football League. And of course, we were just talking about Aaron Rodgers, but Cam Newton and his talent. I just can't talk enough about it. But what he's able to do with Ted Ginn Jr. as his number one wide receiver, as many know. I mean, Kelvin Benjamin was lost in the early on in training camp, I believe, due to a torn ACL. This guy is working with Ted Ginn Jr. as his number one wide receiver. Yes, he has Greg Olsen. They drafted the wide receiver out of Michigan in the second round. He's been hit with some injuries throughout this start of the season as well. What he's been able to do, lack of running game. The offensive line isn't impressive at all. Probably one of the worst offensive lines in the National Football League. What Cam Newton has been able to do this season, and then obviously on defense, they've been able to still, like I said, they're undefeated. They're able to still play well on defense without their leader, Luke Kuechly, who has missed, I think, the last 3 games due to a concussion. The start to the season that the Carolina Panthers have gotten off to it has really surprised me. And I wonder if, at some point this season, maybe they make a trade for a number 1, number 2 wide receiver, a veteran wide receiver, and maybe that'll help their chances in making a deep run late in the season and into the playoffs.
The Carolina Panthers have absolutely been phenomenal. Yes, their schedule has been super easy against 4 cat crap the bed teams in Jacksonville, New Orleans, and Houston, and just recently Tampa. But you can't deny that Cam Newton has become a leader and has put this team on his shoulders. And there is another player on that team who's crazy about. No Luke Kuechly, try Josh Norman. Josh Norman is playing as good as any corner in the NFL, already leading the league with 4 picks, including a pick 6 off of Jameis Winston last week. Do you think this guy has entered the conversation it being an elite corner in the NFL?
Well, first off, I can't believe I brought up the Carolina Panthers and didn't bring up the success of Josh Norman. I mean, you're right. He's probably playing better than any cornerback in the league. And yes, like you said, they haven't had the toughest start to the season. They've certainly played some, I hate to say it, mediocre teams. But yeah, I mean, Josh Norman, he's gotten off to a great start to the season, and it's great to see. I mean, I believe he was a former third-round draft pick from the Carolina Panthers, and he's a small school guy from Coastal Carolina, a small FCS program. So it's definitely great to see. But I do think that he has a ton of potential. Obviously, he's showing that to start this season. But I'm not ready to put him in the discussion of top cornerbacks in the league. Now, somebody that you mentioned earlier on the Atlanta Falcons, Desmond Trufant. Now, that's somebody that I think he's the real deal. I think Josh Norman, although he's gotten off to a great start to the season, he's really had a pretty solid start to his career. And he's still a young player. I think this might be his third year in the league. Still has a lot of time to grow, and obviously the sky's the limit for him. But I don't think I'm ready to put him in the conversation for an elite cornerback, but he's certainly a good one, that's for sure.
Yes, he's still going to have to keep this up, and Trufant definitely has a lot more on his resume, as I implied earlier, which is why I still remain bullish on Atlanta in that division. But look here at Carolina's next couple games. They are on bye this week, and then return the week after, having to go to CenturyLink Field at Seattle. If they and after that they return over to play the Eagles, and I don't think they should have a problem there. And then they return for a potentially difficult 2-game homestand against the Colts, especially if Andrew Luck is healthy, and then against the aforementioned Green Bay Packers. So do you think their next slate of games, their second quarter of the season is going to be very telling, won't it?
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, you said it. They've started the season off against some, like I said, I hate to say it, but they've been mediocre opponents. I mean, the Saints, the Texans, the Bucks, the Jaguars. I mean, these are teams that they're probably expected to beat, and they were. Hence why they're undefeated so far. But, going against teams like the Seahawks, like the Green Bay Packers, it's definitely going to be more telling. Looking at the two teams in that division, really why I brought up the Carolina Panthers is because, yes, those teams might be mediocre, but what Cam Newton is able to get away with and what he's been able to get away with, and obviously the success of that defense has been pretty impressive. But I don't know exactly how long that might last. Hopefully it lasts the entire season. Who knows? But I don't exactly know how much success you can have going up against a team like the Seattle Seahawks when you're going in with, Ted Ginn Jr. as their number one wide receiver. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, is Jericho Cotchery still there? I don't even know. I mean, just some washed up wide receivers. Obviously, you got a great tight end in Greg Olsen. He's one of the top receiving tight ends in the league. But, a lack of running game. We mentioned that offensive line. It's not too great. If I had to choose, I would certainly say I'm more confident in the Atlanta Falcons making a run than the Carolina Panthers. But yeah, this second half or this second quarter of the Carolina Panthers season is certainly going to be telling, as they're playing some much more respected and tougher opponents.
Absolutely. And now let's move on to other teams that have disappointed. And I am going to start off this conversation by saying the Indianapolis Colts. But that said, I wasn't sold on them as a bona fide Super Bowl contender because of the issues they have on their offensive line and in their pass rush. But they have been even worse than I anticipated. Like Andrew Luck at times has looked like Jay Cutler, like throwing off his back foot a ball into balls into brick walls that shouldn't be where they shouldn't be thrown. It's been surprising and disappointing to see Andrew Luck playing the way he has. And even worse, he's got a bum shoulder and he's not playing again tonight. So are you surprised with how Andrew Luck has played this year so far?
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think, kind of like Denver, I mean, that offensive line is not helping Andrew Luck out at all. And obviously, they've touched on it. I mean, they know that this is a bad offensive line, but throughout the years, I mean, they're just not really trying to do much to kind of to kind of fill the voids. I mean, you draft Philip Dorsett in the first round of this year's draft, and I just don't see how they saw wide receiver being a need for this team when, in order for the ball to get down the field, Andrew Luck is going to have to be protected up front. So, that offensive line is really disappointing. And obviously, you mentioned it, Andrew Luck is missing his second game of his career, second straight game this season against Houston. I still think that it's possible that they could squeak out the victory with Matt Hasselbeck there, but you know, I think everybody is pretty surprised by the start the Indianapolis Colts have gotten off to. I mean, many had them as a Super Bowl, representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. But you know, there's a lot of things to be kind of shocked by. I mean, the fall of Andre Johnson. I mean, he hasn't done anything this season. Now he is up there in age, but I didn't expect him to look this old. At least in his first year with the Indianapolis Colts. Frank Gore. I mean, it's not looking too great in Indy, but the good thing is for them, they still have 12 weeks to turn it around, and they're playing in one of the weakest divisions in the National Football League. So I mean that kind of bodes well for them. But you better believe, towards the end of November and in December, they better turn things around if they want to make a run.
They most certainly do. And to be fair, I still think they win their division, but I do not see them as a bona fide Super Bowl contender at all right now, because their lack of protection for Andrew Luck and their lack of pass rushers on defense. I think this team, in my opinion, has a ways to go to compete with the New England Patriots of the world. You agree?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%. I mean, I think you could look at the New England Patriots and say that they're better in every aspect of the game than the Indianapolis Colts.
Absolutely. And another side story to all this, Colts, which Peter King himself, that guy, I keep referencing Peter King a lot, and I understand there's some people that hate him. I don't. He's one of my favorite NFL writers and analysts out there. I respect Peter very much, and for those of you who hate him, I'm sorry. I love him. But Peter King called the Colts a hot mess in his column, and that's what they are right now, a hot mess. The friction between Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano. And with Chuck Pagano potentially being his last year in Indianapolis. But here's what I wanted to ask you. I personally think it would be a disgrace if Chuck Pagano is thrown overboard instead of Ryan Grigson. Chuck Pagano didn't draft this offensive line. Ryan Grigson did. And Ryan Grigson, if you thought the Colts teams with Peyton Manning were soft, this looks even softer, in my opinion. Grigson, this is like the ultimate offensive happy fantasy football team with little talent in the trenches on defense, although they do have two good rookie defensive linemen, but that's about it. Other than that, I don't think they strike me as good on defense or offense, but I'm mumbling. But it's just a basic question, though. Are the Colts making a mistake by firing Chuck Pagano instead of Ryan Grigson? Because in my opinion, Ryan Grigson is the one that should be shown the door and not Chuck Pagano.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're absolutely right, and I don't think there's too much I could even add on to what you just said. But yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's not Chuck Pagano that's adding talent to this roster. And while they might look like an elite team on paper, it's a totally different game on field. Obviously, that's where you have to perform, is on the field. It doesn't matter what the team looks like on paper at the end of the day. But like you said, I mean, the team, they don't have really many defensive studs. I mean, their defense has been pretty bad over the last it's been a while since that. I mean, that defense has been pretty good. I couldn't even tell you since when, but obviously names like in the past, Dwight Freeney. Obviously, Robert Mathis is getting he's getting really up there in age, but I don't know. I mean, I am surprised by the start the start of the season of the Indianapolis Colts. I mean, first off, I mean, you really did not need Philip Dorsett in the first round. I know I said that already, but you got to add on to the offensive line with that at least with that first round pick. I mean, did you really need Philip Dorsett, who's the team's fourth wide receiver? No, and maybe towards the end of the season he'll be the team's third or second. I mean, I do think Dante Moncrief is really good, but like I said, Andre Johnson has been pretty awful this season. I don't think I think it would be the wrong move by the Indianapolis Colts to keep Grigson and fire Pagano. But however, I could see them, and this is just pure speculation. I could see them parting ways with both of them, just because I even think that the top of the organization I think that they do think that they have enough to win. But like I said, that's just pure speculation. I personally like Chuck Pagano as a head coach. Obviously, has a hell of a story. And I know that's, there's you got to put coaching aside from that and look at what he's been doing so far this season. But I think Pagano is a pretty damn good coach.
I completely agree. Just ask that to Ray Lewis and Ed Reed, who played under him at Baltimore when he was their defensive coordinator during their final years in the National Football League. And so I believe they should at least consider keeping Pagano. But another thought I have about the Colts, in my opinion, it will be a failure of epic proportions if they do not win multiple Super Bowls with Andrew Luck. If they don't, it is going to make me even more convinced that Peyton Manning only winning one with Indy and Andrew Luck, if he only wins one, only winning one with Indy, and that's a big if. I actually hope he wins multiple, but if that is the case, I think the finger has to be pointed in a way to Jim Irsay, because Irsay, he should thank his lucky stars that he had Peyton Manning and now has Andrew Luck, because I think they're covering up a lot of his glaring weaknesses as an owner, because the Colts aren't necessarily the best team at developing talent necessarily. They weren't necessarily that during Peyton years, and they're not necessarily that right now. So do you think Irsay and the organizational structure of the Colts plays a role in the failures of these organizations, despite having a bona fide legendary quarterback?
Well, obviously, when you think of the owners and whatnot of these teams, like Jim Irsay and Jerry Jones, those are the two that really come to mind when you think about the owners in the National Football League. I could see those two as being guys that kind of want to be in there, kind of be behind the scenes, but they certainly want to make some moves with the team and around the team. But I don't think you can really look at Jim Irsay and say, he's the reason for the team failing. I mean, obviously, I do think you got to put on the general manager and the head coach. I mean, these are the guys that are kind of bringing in the talent, the general manager, obviously, and then the coach is coaching the talent. But yeah, I don't think I'll put any of the blame or too much of the blame on Jim Irsay. I mean, I think he just wants a winning team, and I think that obviously with Andrew Luck, I feel pretty good that, throughout his career, he'll win 2 Super Bowls. I mean, he is just something else, and he's been incredibly great since his rookie season. Obviously, he's struggling this season, but not everybody's going to have a spectacular season every year. But yeah, in the end, I think it is all on the coaches and the general manager. I don't want to place too much blame on a guy like Jim Irsay, who is kind of he's upper management.
You bring a good point, but I just but there's just a lot of rumblings that many people say about Irsay and how he has mismanaged his role in certain ways, and I'm not saying it's all his fault, but I think he has some responsibility. But you're right, the coach and the GM are obviously factored in even more here, because they're the football brains and not the owner. But that was. Sounded like a waste of a question, but that's what we do on the show. We dig deep into our minds and talk about football. And we have about less than 20 minutes to go. But before we do, what are some teams that you believe that might not be 4-0 now? And I definitely know of one of them that you're thinking of, but what are some teams that you think are currently 3-1 who could make a serious run at a Super Bowl?
Well, let me think. Let's see. I got these teams right up here. Only teams that are 3-1?
3-1 or 2-2.
All right, let's see. I could see I was really high on the Pittsburgh Steelers, but they've kind of upset so far. I mean, they're 2 losses so far this season. Obviously, they should have won that game against the Baltimore Ravens the other day if it wasn't for Josh Scobie missing those field goals. And then week 1, they had a nice battle against the New England Patriots, again, leaving points on the board. But I don't know. I kind of expected a little bit more out of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and obviously with Ben Roethlisberger out now, it's going to be tough for them to make a run. Now, he is expected to be back. I think he was expected to miss about 6 to 8 weeks. Last Thursday was his first game that he missed. So with Ben Roethlisberger missing a substantial amount of time, I'm going to place the Pittsburgh Steelers kind of on the outside. And I think I'm going to lean towards the team that you kind of had a feeling that I was going to bring up, and that's the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, Bruce Arians, I think, and if for whatever reason the Indianapolis Colts let go of Chuck Pagano, I think they're going to regret big time letting go of letting Bruce Arians walk and take the head coaching gig in Arizona, because I think that's my favorite head coach in the National Football League right now. They have a great team. Even that defense is still playing at a very high level, a very talented defense. But as you know, their defensive coordinator from last season, Todd Bowles, he took a head coaching job with the New York Jets, and now their linebacker coach, James Betcher, he's now the defensive coordinator of the Arizona Cardinals, and that defense is still rolling. And Carson Palmer has been playing at probably the best football of his career, really. I mean, I know they fell short to the St. Louis Rams last week, 22-24. He didn't have a great game, but didn't struggle highly. But anyways, when Carson Palmer is back there, when they're protecting Carson Palmer, when Carson Palmer is healthy, this is not only an offense that's very scary, as we've seen to the start of the season. I mean, they've put up a pretty large amount of points to start this season. But that defense, man, it's still playing at a high level. I mean, I love the Honey Badger. You got Patrick Peterson, they're just rocking and rolling. And I'm loving the start to the season that the Arizona Cardinals have gotten off to. And again, in a still very tough NFC West division, San Francisco isn't looking like a great team, but man, the St. Louis Rams and the Seattle Seahawks, they're starting to work their way up. At least the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely. They certainly are. God, I use the word absolutely so much. You got to remind me to use other words.
I'm using it a lot as well, man.
Oh, God, yeah. We got to look for new vocabulary in this business all the time. But I do agree about the Arizona Cardinals. And another thing that you left out, surprisingly, Larry Fitzgerald has appeared to have found the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
And somebody named Chris Johnson has seemingly found some of that fountain of youth as well. Wouldn't you say so?
Oh, yeah. And you know what? It's funny because they also drafted a rookie in the 3rd round out of Northern Iowa, David Johnson. And that man, not only on offense, but special teams. I mean, he's making a huge impact as well. But yeah, I mean, Chris Johnson has looked pretty solid so far. And like you said, I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, I believe he's 32, 33. He's looking 25, 26. He's looking like, prime time Larry Fitzgerald right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is all without Michael Floyd as well.
And I'm glad every week I selected him in the 11th round in one of my fantasy football drafts. So keep it up, Fitz. I need you. And you mentioned another team in the NFC West. We obviously know about the Seahawks and their championship pedigree, but the St. Louis Rams, they beat the Arizona Cardinals last week, and it was behind somebody named Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley played like the running back I expected him to be eventually in the NFL. I didn't expect him to look this good this year because of him coming back from the ACL, but that speaks of how much of a freak he is and why he drew countless comparisons to somebody named Adrian Peterson during the draft process. And the Rams are an interesting team. Like, for some reason, they play every team in their division and every team that is superior to them, like they play like they're a team that is Super Bowl caliber. But when they play regular teams outside their division, they look lost. They're a very weird team, but like they've looked amazing for 2 weeks in their 2 wins, and suspect for their other 2 wins. They are a Jekyll and Hyde team, man. Like, do you think the St. Louis Rams could win the NFC West this year? And if so, what are they going to need to do so?
I think the NFC West is up for grabs. I mean, you got the Arizona Cardinals on top of it right now, and if they continue to play the way that they are, I think they'll still be able to squeak it out. Obviously, Seattle, they've gotten off to a slow start. They've won the last 2 straight. And as for the St. Louis Rams, I don't think anybody's really expecting Colin Kaepernick and the San Francisco 49ers to win that division. But as for the St. Louis Rams, Todd Gurley was on fire. He was a magician last week. I mean, 19 rushes, 146 yards, I believe. Also 2 receptions, 15 yards out of the backfield. And this was only his second game back. I mean, I would count it as his first because 2 weeks ago in his actual first game of the season, I think he only seen about 5 carries or if that. This was kind of the first game where they had no limitations on Todd Gurley, and he was able to do what he wanted when he wanted, not only against this Arizona Cardinals defense, but they were playing in Arizona. And obviously, it being a divisional game, it's even more impressive going up against one of the top teams in the NFC. I think the NFC West is totally up for grabs as of right now between the Rams, Seahawks, and Arizona Cardinals. I think there's absolutely a shot that the Seattle Seahawks, the St. Louis Rams could win the division. And for them to do that, obviously the defense is going to have to keep up the solid gameplay. I mean, they're playing great. I mean, Aaron Donald he's just something else. I think
best defensive tackle since Ward Sapp, if not better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you could put him in the argument of the best defensive lineman in the National Football League right now, next to J.J. Watt. That if that defense keeps up the high level of play, and if Todd Gurley is able to stay healthy and they keep feeding him the ball, kind of limit Nick Foles. You don't really want to put the game in his hands. So kind of limit him and just run the ball down the field. I think they have a great shot. I mean, it's going to be some old school style of football that'll kind of bring the St. Louis Rams some success, if you ask me.
I completely agree, and it kind of reminds me of how the Seahawks have dominated the division the last 2 years with a quarterback who makes enough good plays to win, a running back who could carry the offense on his back and inspire tenacity in the rest of the team, and a defense that just knows how to beat the crap out of you. Yeah. And that's how the Rams are pretty much operating right now. So I agree. That is going to be an interesting 3-way race in that division the rest of the way. And I want to conclude by talking about another team that has caught my eyes, and I actually saw them in person in Denver this past weekend, the Minnesota Vikings. Yes, they're 2-2, but I think that they are a team on the rise, and I don't think they're going to win that division. The Packers are going to win the division, but I think they are good enough right now to at least give the Packers a run for their money when they play each other, given the talent that they have, especially on defense, and Teddy Bridgewater's continued progress, and of course, Adrian Peterson coming back. You think the Vikings can at least give the Packers a bit of a challenge?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like you said, I mean, on defense, I mean, a guy that has really stepped his game up, I think starting last season when they let Jared Allen walk is Everson Griffin. He's really making a name for himself lately. That defense, and obviously, like we mentioned, I mean, the better the pass rush, the better the secondary will be. And if you're playing a guy like Aaron Rodgers, you certainly have to have a solid pass rush, and even that might not be enough. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is just ridiculous that way. But yeah, I mean, the Minnesota Vikings, I got to admit, though, I mean, starting the season off against the St. Louis Rams,
that was a shock.
49ers, I did not expect them to drop that game. And the way that they did drop the game, I mean, they did not look like a very good team that day. But I mean, I believe I remember talking to you in the summer. I mean, you and I were both pretty high on this Minnesota Vikings team. I think I'm on record as saying, they might have had my favorite my favorite draft class of the 2015 draft, either them or the Baltimore Ravens. But either way, yeah, I mean, this Vikings team is loaded with talent. The NFC North is not as challenging as many people thought it would be this season. I mean, I wasn't very high on the Detroit Lions to start this season, but didn't see them going 0-4. And as we know, they should be 1-3 probably right now. But
damn you, KJ Wright! Damn you, refs!
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, that's a different story for another show. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely think that yeah, obviously the NFC North is the Green Bay Packers division right now, and it probably will be for the next who knows how long, as long as Aaron Rodgers is playing. But yeah, the Minnesota Vikings are definitely in good hands. They're probably I feel very good in saying that they will be number 2 in the division, maybe make a run for the wild card spot. But yeah, I mean, the Vikings are also in good hands for the future as well under Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, Adrian Peterson. I mean, they got to feed him the ball. You know, kind of like Nick Foles in St. Louis. I mean, you still want to run the ball. I mean, Adrian Peterson can still play at a high level, and he is still one of the league's top running backs. But Teddy Bridgewater, I feel much more comfortable with Teddy Bridgewater than I do with Nick Foles. So yeah, in the end, yeah, I'm still a fan of the Minnesota Vikings. I kind of thought that they would get off to a little better start to the season. But hey, they're 500, they're 2-2, and obviously they're still in the race, and there's still 12 more weeks to go. But they're still in the race for this wild card spot at least. I mean, who knows? Maybe they shock the world and win the division, but I don't see that happening.
I don't see them winning the division, but my point was I think when they play the Packers twice, I think they keep it close in at least one, if not both of those games.
Yeah, I'll say I don't know about both of them, but
The one in Minnesota for sure.
Correct. I do think. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying possibly win both of the games. Yeah, I do think that they could keep even both of the games competitive and close. So yeah, no doubt about that. I think that defense has really been has really upgraded over the last couple of years.
They have, and another stud on that defense who stood out to me at that game Sunday is Anthony Barr. That guy is growing into a monster. He not only does he rush the passer very well, he's also an elite already, in my opinion, in pass coverage. When he picked Peyton Manning off, he read him like a book. It was just, yes, you could talk about how bad a decision it was by Peyton Manning all day long. It was bad. It was a bad one. I'm not excusing Peyton for it at all, but you have to give props to Anthony Barr, who in my opinion is becoming a stud at the outside linebacker position in this league. And if his pass rush skills continue to improve, he could be like Khalil Mack and Von Miller and Justin Houston with even better pass coverage skills in all three of them.
And what's scary is that this is only his second year in the NFL.
Absolutely. And he was a running back for most of his college career.
It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun seeing him and his former college teammate, Michael Kendricks.
Eric Kendricks.
Eric Kendricks. Michael, I'm not exactly, Philadelphia Eagles. But yeah, his Eric Kendricks. Yeah, you're correct. It's going to be fun watching them play for the next 10 years or so, however long they play.
Absolutely. And I thought Teddy Bridgewater became a man at that against the Broncos on Sunday. He was constantly under duress, yet he doesn't get the knock. He said, "Oh, he's unathletic. He lacks wild traits." So yes, he does. He keeps kind of like a lesser version of Aaron Rodgers. He keeps plays alive with his feet and is able to get the ball out when he's being sacked into the hands of a waiting receiver at the right time. Teddy Bridgewater, I think the sky's the limit for that guy. And I think even though it was a losing effort, I think he came of age, and that Vikings team came of age by coming back from 2 10-point deficits to tie, coming back from 2 double-digit deficits to eventually tie that game. And I think they're only going to get better as a result.
And I agree with you 100%. And, I'm a huge Teddy Bridgewater fan. And, I absolutely hated seeing him fumble the ball on that last play to then give the Denver Broncos the football. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, the sky is certainly the limit for Teddy Bridgewater. He has all the talent that you want in a young quarterback. Now let's just see exactly how his career plays out because, last season he didn't have the greatest weapons, but now here he is. They got Kyle Rudolph back. They got Mike Wallace. I mean, you're starting to get some pieces for Teddy Bridgewater now. Obviously, the biggest one in being running back Adrian Peterson.
Yes, and another guy who also played good Sunday, Stephon Diggs, the rookie out of Maryland. He looked awesome on Sunday, despite putting the ball on the ground twice. I think he could be another amazing weapon for Teddy Bridgewater down the road. But that's enough about the Minnesota Vikings. And we are almost out of time here on Sports Crunch with D. Crom. But one last thing before we go I want to discuss is let's say if you could pick The team in the AFC that's best equipped to challenge the Patriots currently, and the team in the NFC best equipped to challenge the Packers currently, who would those teams be?
Oh man. Let's see. I got a list of the teams right here in front of me. I will say that's tough. Wow. You know, I, I still think, and this might come as a surprise. I'm leaning towards either Buffalo, the Jets, or this team may come as a little surprise due to the slow start that they've gotten off to this season. Is the Kansas City Chiefs. They really got to strap things up, and especially on defense. Over the last couple of years, they've been one of the top defensive teams in the league, especially with that pass rush with Justin Houston and Tamba Hali, and then obviously Dontari Poe right there in the middle of that defensive line. But I don't know. I don't know if Alex Smith is going to be able to live up to that challenge. If Big Ben was still healthy, and this is the nature of playing in the National Football League, it's a week-to-week game. You don't know what's going to happen. I'll certainly say the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think they have the greatest, the best offense in the NFL, the best offensive weapons in the NFL with Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, and then now they're getting Martavis Bryant back. If I had to choose one team, that's really tough. And I think I would lean towards, and nothing against your Denver Broncos. I know I left them out. They probably will give them a challenge. But if I had to pick one team, I think I would lean towards the Buffalo Bills, mainly just because of their defense, their defensive line. I think I feel more comfortable with their defensive line as opposed to the New York Jets defensive line. Obviously, you can't go wrong with either of those two defensive lines. And yes, the Jets are getting Sheldon Richardson back, but you know, and this may I don't know how you feel about this, but I think as of right now, I think I feel more comfortable with Tyrod Taylor as my quarterback than Ryan Fitzpatrick. And as you know, it's a quarterback's game now. You have to have a solid quarterback, and based off of those two guys, and I think overall, I think the Buffalo Bills have a pretty talented squad. I think the Buffalo Bills would probably give the New England Patriots the best run for their money. And as for the NFC, I'll stick with the Arizona Cardinals, and I kind of said it earlier. I mean, they're one of the hottest teams in the National Football League right now. Yes, they're coming off of a loss against the division rival in the St. Louis Rams, but I'm in love with their defense. They haven't skipped a beat after Todd Bowles went off to take the head coaching gig at New York Jets. But if Carson Palmer is healthy, and so far he has been this season, you said it a couple of times. I've said it a couple of times throughout this show. The sky is the limit for the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, as long as they get a solid running game back there, Chris Johnson the last couple of weeks has played well. David Johnson, the rookie, Bruce Arians said he kind of wants to make him earn his earn time on the field, and I certainly think he's done that throughout these first 4 weeks of the season. I think if they're able to continue having a solid running game, I think Carson Palmer will have no problem having success with, of course, Larry Fitzgerald, who's gotten off to a great start to the season. Michael Floyd will be coming back sometime soon, and they still have John Brown. I'll say the Arizona Cardinals right now are probably the team to challenge the Green Bay Packers, and obviously I'd probably go to Seattle, but that offensive line is just too concerning.
Good points on all fronts, except I find the Buffalo Bills in the AFC that's a rather interesting choice, but we shall see. And that does it for today's edition of Sports Crunch with D-Crom. And before we go, let's let Chris explain to our listeners about where you can listen to his podcast right now.
Well, I appreciate it, David. As always, it's fun chatting with you, fun talking NFL. I could do it all day, every day. Yeah, you guys could check out the CS podcast. I upload all the interviews on YouTube at youtube.com/ChristianRE722. And I've started my own new radio show as well, Tuesday evenings from 7:30 p.m. Central Time to, from 7 p.m. Central Time to 8:30 p.m. Central Time. And it's going to be called it was the CS podcast for the first few weeks, but now we have changed it to All Access Football, talking all things football, college, small school college football, and of course the National Football League. every week, every Tuesday, again, 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Time. NFLDraftBible.com. We're partnered with NUC Sports now, and those Tuesday shows will be aired on ZenoLive.com. And of course, you guys can follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafelt. I'm always chatting it up with DCrom59 on Twitter. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Chris Shanafelt to find all of my work, and of course, follow this guy right here, David Cromwell at DCrom59. He is definitely a follow for all football fans.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Chris, and thank you for coming on the show and giving us your amazing input as always. And I hope to do it again sometime very, very soon.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, you know how to reach me. It's always fun.
It is always fun. And that does it for today for Sports Crunch with D-Crom. But join us next time as we talk about more of this great adventure that is the 2015 NFL season. Take care, everybody.